Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new era of Tarnished Bronze with the same great people, Patrick and myself, talking about things that you might have missed from the Bronze Age. Now, Fantastic Four in the Bronze Age is obviously not something anyone is missing, but they might be missing some of these earlier sort of non-canonical team-up issues. Patrick, where did you first see this?
Yeah, this one had to have been bought off the grocery store spinner rack. It is cover intact. Well, as intact as a cover from 1980 can be. I can see my extra little kid staples that I put in to hold the cover to the comic. So this is from May of 1980. So probably when it came out was before my birthday, so I would say I was probably about six, something around there. And loved this cover. Always loved this cover. Still love this cover. So much happening. So many different characters. So many different colors. The fight scene is just excellent. And we've got, as we spoke about in one of our previous episodes, it is of the time to have the words on the cover. It's a battle royale, or I guess it's a battle royal, with the Frightful Four. And what? They've signed up two new members, Electro and Spider-Man. What? So we're definitely intrigued. Now I realized later that this is the only issue that I had, but I think this picks up from this is a second of two. Um, it's the cataclysmic conclusion to the tale begun in Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 42.
Yeah.
Um, and usually I would go back and buy my missing ones, but I don't think I have that. Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man 42. I don't think so.
So I'm going to say it here. The Superior Spider-Man in the late 70s is going to be not the Superior Spider-Man in the Doctor Octopus inhabiting Spider-Man. The Superior Spider-Man stories of the time are done of the late 70s and early 80s are in Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. And
Hmm.
Bill Mantlo and Al Milgrom will basically take Black Cat to a whole new level in the course of 60 or so issues. So really, really great if you're into Spider-Man. I have read the first story to this. Um, we'll get into the pros and cons of Bill Mantlo a bit later. But I hate to break it to you, Patrick, after all of these years, but this cover is actually drawn by the person who draws Secret Wars 2, and I know how much you love that, Mr. Al Milgrom. So I
Wow.
really hate to bring you down to earth, but this is the Milgrom cover.
I see it.
Um, and we all know your thoughts about Secret Wars 2. Secret Wars 1, I believe, is your pinnacle, right? And
Love. Even
Chef's
though everybody
Kiss.
hates it, I know that it dates me. It makes me look juvenile. I love it. But yeah, Secret Wars 2. This shows, I guess, what he can do if he has time. It just looks so rushed. I thought the art in Secret Wars 2 is so messy
So
and just chaotic. I don't like it at all.
So I just
I
want you to
love this.
maybe reevaluate Mr. Milgram because he does a lot of inking on a whole bunch of different artists as well. But he does pencil the Hulk for a while. He inks the Hulk. He pencils Spectacular Spider-Man, these great Black Cat issues. I think that formed a lot of my um, attraction to the opposite sex is framed through the lens of the Black Cat. So let's just that might be too much information, but it really does make he does a really great job on all that stuff. So I
In my defense,
just had
I
to
think
put that needle in there, Patrick.
in my defense, I think I've definitely seen Milgram comics that I liked. So
Yeah.
I maybe didn't make the connection that it was the same person because obviously this cover doesn't look anything like the insides of the Secret Wars 2. I mean, they're not even close. But I'm almost positive that I have comics from this time period, from his earlier, let's say, if Secret Wars is later years, this earlier time, that is more of that clean kind of comic booky looking style. Because I mean, this is very, artificial and not sort of realistic, but this is what I love.
Yeah.
This kind of cover is just perfect for me.
Yeah, and everyone is using their powers all at once on the cover. It is pretty cool. There's a lot of tarnished bronze firsts in this issue, Patrick. So It's written by Bill Mantlo, who scripted The Invasion. So we've done him. And there's Big Joe Sinnott on inks, and he's like a luminary of Marvel and DC. He's, he's worked with the King Kirby. I mean, what a lineage of talent. Big Joe is awesome, awesome looking dude too, sinking a beer.
Love it.
But the main event here that we haven't really covered on the channel is Mr. John Byrne. Now, do you think he has what it takes for a career in comics, Patrick?
I mean, I don't, maybe not a career in politics, but definitely comics. A huge favorite of both of ours, and definitely somebody that we bonded over our mutual admiration for. Just really love what he can do with a pencil or with a pen, right? I mean, he does good
Does it all.
stories, he does good art. The only thing that I think we've sometimes said about him is maybe he does a little bit better when he has, somebody who can rein him in and do a little bit of editing. I think left to his own devices, he can kind of get out of hand. I kind of think of him as, I don't think I've ever said this to you, and this may not mean anything to you, but he's a little Ryan Murphy-esque. So Ryan Murphy, great TV producer,
Yeah.
when he comes out with a new show, most of the time you know it's going to be great. But if the seasons go on too long, at some point he's probably going to jump the shark, and it's going to be a little bit reductio absurdum. So, and I wouldn't say John Byrne necessarily goes that far, but I think sometimes we've seen when he's sort of left to his own devices, things can kind of like spin out of whack. But when he's starting out and when he's kept sharp and on task, in my opinion, probably my favorite comic book artist and writer.
So, Patrick, we kind of delving into the weeds a little bit in Tarnished Bronze. We're not going for necessarily the greatest hits of the Bronze Age. Now, one of the greatest hits of the Bronze Age, In Search of Galactus. So that's 204 to 208 is someone else doing the art, but I think from 209, Big John Byrne is on board. Now, is that your first John Byrne issues, or are your first John Byrne issues actually X-Men issues?
Um, this came out in 80. I would say probably this. Was he still drawing X-Men when Angel was captured by the Morlocks? And when did that come out? That was after this?
I don't know, but for a couple of professional YouTubers in looking at comic history, maybe we should know something about this. So I'm tempted to say, Patrick, that maybe you delved back and got John Byrne back issues, just
Yes.
off
And
the top.
that makes it difficult to remember. I would say that this is probably the first. I think I remember seeing him on Fantastic Four first.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that makes sense. So he jumped ship from just after the awesome Kitty Pryde Christmas issue. I think that might have been his last X-Men issue.
Okay, then the Angel one was after that for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this might have been one of the first. I just love that picture of Big John Byrne as well. I must admit, I'm a Byrne victim. I probably have over 500 JB comics in the collection. Um, we're going to get into it later, but this isn't meant to like say anything about all of the people involved. They're all trying their best, but Patrick, in Search of Galactus is a masterpiece. And I guess you and I are going to have to find out whether this is a masterpiece. But just a brief history of my John Byrne-isms. So I had the misfortune, much like Patrick has the fortune of his first being all excellent. My first, my first with John Byrne is actually X-Men: The Hidden Years, the much maligned X-Men
No,
Hidden
no, no,
Years.
no, 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 no. Those are
Um,
great.
so I happen to enjoy them, but I can
Yeah.
understand how people get upset about that and Spider-Man Chapter One. So this guy,
The way they fit in and fill in the hole between when X-Men, the original X-Men were stopped publishing to when, right, but the precursor of the new X-Men coming back in 1975, I thought is brilliant. And that's another example of, right, that he drew and wrote those,
yeah,
but it was part and parcel of working with Marvel, so they were keeping him on track, which is what
yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah.
I thought it was great, and I don't even really necessarily love Savage Land Tales. So that's not necessarily my favorite sort of environment to have the heroes in. I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite.
Okay.
I thought it was brilliant. I loved it. When I discovered that it was a thing, I didn't even, I didn't know about it. I don't think it was from you. I think it was before I met you. And of course, I bought the whole lot online and was like just devouring them. It was just
Yeah.
so great.
For me, it was a revelation, but I can understand it's kind of like stepping into your grandparents' old shoes a little bit, if that's an apt metaphor. Not so sure, but I do keep up with him, so I have read a lot of the IDW stuff. I do enjoy. Full disclosure, I do enjoy Next Men as well. And one of the things that I have seen in some of my reading is a few of the Spider-Man stories that Byrne does are very early in his career. And he does have a great mix of, and we'll see it later, a great mix of the Ditko and Romita Sr. It's not quite one, it's not quite the other. But it works pretty well for me. Now, Patrick, this is also another first for us with the Fantastic Four. So is this also your first Fantastic Four?
Yeah, I think so. Close to it. If not the very first, then there may have been. They also used to, besides the Fantastic Four main title, they also used to have a comic called, I feel like it maybe Marvel's Greatest Comics or something, and it was
Yeah,
sort of reprints of the Fantastic Four.
Marvel
So I had a
Age.
couple of those from around the same time, which were like older stories, but they were repackaged, I guess. I
Okay.
kind of like classic X-Men. But I think this is probably one of the first. Now, I was already familiar with the Fantastic Four just from osmosis. They were kind of like in the 70s, kind of like Superman. You would kind of see them around, right? They'd be on trading cards or on lunch boxes or whatever. So
Yeah, it's
you
kind
knew.
of hard to believe.
Yeah. Well, and also another thing that was popular then that I was into because my parents were both into music is I had my own little turntable and had a lot of those storybook records,
Okay.
right? Where you play the record and you turn the storybook, right? And I definitely had a Fantastic Four one of those because I'll never forget they're fighting the Mole Man and Sue Storm is talking about the Mole Man and she says, "Your glasses, I have them," or whatever. And like that's just stuck in my head like 45 years later or whatever. So
So yeah, I'm glad that we have this therapy session with you every week or so, Patrick. So let's
anytime I
let
get a chance to anytime I get a chance to say that in real life, I definitely do. And I have said it in the last like 3 or 4 weeks. So I mean it is really stuck in my head.
so full disclosure, the images here are from my omnibus version, so the color might not quite come out, and some of the perspective is a little bit skew because of the pages. But
Yeah, you
um,
see how much darker it is.
yeah, so I don't mind it on this particular sort of style. I think it might work for the Fantastic Four. But what a great kind of cool. This is a cool splash page and so simple. You can bang this one out. Just to cut a long story short, um, the Spider-Man's actually captured in the Spectacular Spider-Man issue prior to this by the Frightful Four. Now the Frightful Four are they usually? I don't remember them usually being a Spider-Man thing. There, even though they're Spider-Man villains.
Yeah, no. I'm pretty sure that they're more focused on the Fantastic Four, and like it says on the cover, Electro wasn't a member, right? So it was the Trapster, but he was called Paste Pot Pete, which I remember even as a kid, I kind of just hated that. I just felt like it redu I even at 6 years old, I already didn't really like comic relief. So I just didn't, I'm like, oh, they've got this cool guy named the Trapster. He's got this cool gun. He's impersonating, not to give away the plot, but he's impersonating Spider-Man and climbing up the side of the wall. And then we're just making a joke out of him by, making fun of his old name. Something about that I didn't like when I was a kid. But Medusa of the Inhumans used to be one of the original members of the Frightful
Right.
Four, along with Wizard. I think he was always a member. And I don't really know how he went from like Spider-Man villain to Frightful Four, but I feel like he was an original. I could be wrong.
So it's
This
not
is my
like the the
introduction.
the the, the lower divisions, and then you play well there, and then you get transferred into a Premier League team, Patrick. Like
When the Wizard sends you an invitation to join.
yeah,
But yeah, what's going on here is, like you said, they've captured Spider-Man, and now Trapster is trying to impersonate Spider-Man to infiltrate the Fantastic Four headquarters. And he does a really great job. I mean, he scales a wall. He shows excellent strength and agility. So, I mean, he's doing Spider-Man things without Spider-Man powers. He convinces the Human Torch to let him in the window. And
yeah.
of course, Johnny does because he and Spider-Man are good friends. And at this time in Marvel Comic Dome, they were teaming up. Uh, quite a bit. I'd say that they were sort of analogs of each other. They were the young, kind of young guns. So you'd often see them sort of interacting in group comic books. But Trapster immediately gets behind him, gets the sneak on him, and takes Johnny out of commission.
And
And he's
also says pleasant dreams, you flaming freak, which I think means something different in Australia, but that's fine.
and then he gets his suction cups back on and goes to town. I mean,
I don't know why I can't just walk normally through the Fantastic Four headquarters.
I I just can't imagine how difficult that would like the Trapster is in insane shape.
Yeah.
No one should make fun of him being called Paste Pot Pete. I
Look at
can't say it.
just the amount of planks that one would have to do in your day to train up to do that is it's pretty astonishing.
So the next person on his list is the Thing, and here we go. You love a training scene with lifting huge rectangular pieces of metal.
No, so I will give John Byrne credit. He's done some design on his lifting apparatus, and it looks like there's a mechanism there that you can adjust in order to make the poundage heavier or lighter, which is yeah, and then if you're real lightweight, you can just use the barbells in the corner.
In the
But
back.
if you're thing powered, then you get this awesome, amazing, astonishing, advantageous contraption to really get the pecs going.
Yeah, but bussin'.
Yeah,
The
way better than the Justice League Detroit headquarters where they're just lifting cubes.
I have to just say, I mean, looking at this, I love the art so much, but you can kind of see, well, I think there's a little more detail in the original than what you're
Oh,
seeing.
this is massive blow up. This is just so you know, take that for what it's worth.
But I
Um,
will say, even with the omnibus sort of dumbing down the art a little bit, I do think that you can see that from 1980 to where Byrne eventually takes the Fantastic Four, his art style really becomes what we know as John Byrne, vintage John Byrne,
yeah.
right? I think he's continuing to perfect his craft, in
He's
my opinion.
also drawing Captain America, I think, pretty much around here. So he's probably double, like for a lot of his career with Marvel, definitely Marvel and maybe DC, he would do two big books every. He might, so for example, this might be Alpha Flight or something that he's doing concurrently, or She-Hulk, I don't know. Yeah, so I can see how it's a little bit flat to me, but we'll get into the art. We'll get into the art a bit later. But I just wanted to let you know that I was aware that we've still got these exercise tropes in tarnished bronze. This is another great scene, and I think this comes across even better in the omnibus printing because I can see the facial expressions and stuff of Sue Storm. It actually kind of works pretty well for me, I think. So meanwhile, Trapster is sort of tooling around the Fantastic Four headquarters. He's trying to get the Thing, and who is the next person on his list? Sue
He took
Storm.
the thing out of commission, and then while he's continuing to sort of make his way into the headquarters, the Invisible Girl discovers her brother trapped in the paste, and at this time, she's taken out by Sandman and Electro. She's
And this
if
was a
I recall correctly,
yeah.
she's turned into a living statue, right?
So yeah, I thought this was a pretty cool panel.
It's crazy to me that she at this point in her career didn't have the ability to make her clothes invisible yet.
So I think they cheat you out of a no prize by saying that she put on pajamas or a night clothes that aren't the molecular bonding clothes or whatever it is.
Yeah, but later in her career, she
Oh,
could like turn like she could turn you invisible if you were
oh, so
standing.
she's not powered up. She's not
That's my memory of it, right? She could make other things invisible, I thought,
she didn't
at a
she's
certain
not
point.
all swole yet or whatever they
Yeah.
whatever they say.
But yeah, Electro somehow, I don't know exactly what he does. He creates an magnetic storm around her, carbonizing the air and imprisoning her within a sheath of rock hard electrocarbon atoms.
Okay, so that sounds pretty much straight out of the second Star Wars, which the title I'm just blanking on right now.
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah,
So here we have the only person left of the Fantastic Four is Reed Richards, and the entire Frightful Four have now infiltrated the headquarters, and they're
panel of
getting
the book, in my opinion.
say,
The panel of the book, in my opinion. The
oh,
four villains, like, yeah.
sneaking up on him. Yeah, exactly. He has no idea what's going on, but of course the wizard warns him. They could have just taken him out, and it would have been finished. But the wizard has to warn him, and that gives Reed just enough time to turn with the blow.
And he comes up with some cool contraptions. I, you know,
Just a
I,
vacuum cleaner.
yeah. Just so much going on here. Uh, this is another panel that I really like, and I think it really works in these super saturated omnibus style whites and the colors and stuff. Is the fact that the corkscrewing of Reed and then the corkscrewing of the vacuum
Hmm.
thing, I think that just really works beautifully and is not easy necessarily to come up to conceive of, let alone draw. So there are some elements in here where I think Byrne would lean into them more later, whereas right now they just sort of happenstance. I'm not really planning for this. They're coming out as accidents. But later on, I think he really does put some more kind of thought into this, Patrick. And I think so. Reed has basically got to deal with all these guys at once, right?
Yeah, and it's a good fight scene. I particularly like the wizard in that fight scene. While Reed is trapped, and just about ready to be taken out by the four, Spider-Man shows up to save the day. He's broken out of his trap in their hovercraft that's outside the Baxter building, and he busts in and then sort of frees Reed Richards. That's when he's able to get the vacuum cleaner going, and together they take on the Frightful Four.
I like the top right, how I don't know if you played the game Sonic the Hedgehog, but that's a very Sonic the Hedgehog looking Reed Richards to me. Like, he's about to do his spin and go crazy. Just look at the red and the blue. Um,
The love of Face Off, and I really like Electro. I think Electro's a very interesting looking character. They make him a little bit of a joke here. Once it's a good fight, and then they sort of fall into the Frightful Four as kind of a joke trope, which again, I don't really love that, but it happens.
so like I said, I have that sort of omnibus edition, so the colors suit Spider-Man, to be honest. And the Fantastic Four is always, to me, a bit more brighter and affair than some of the other things that I have in omnibus. So I wasn't too disappointed by that, but it seemed to me like we this was a little bit like reminded me of that Justice League annual. You might have mentioned it as well. Things just wrapped up for reasons that escape me, like the comic just ended.
Well, Spider-Man and Reed Richards are able to subdue three of the villains, right? They're pretty quickly once they're able to fight together. And the Trapster escapes. Now, this is the part I really didn't like. The Trapster escapes and he's running away, and then he runs into the other three members of the Fantastic Four who have freed themselves from the various traps and just faints. Which also is like that JLA because if you recall, Dr. Destiny, when he is faced with the Justice League, just faints. So, I mean, that's a bit of a weak villain. I want him to, take a hostage, hold up in the Star Labs, maybe,
Yeah,
until be starved out. Or what did they do? They pumped the oxygen out of the
yeah.
building. Yeah. So yeah, they do wrap it up a little bit quick, but man, it's actually a good fight scene. The art is just top notch. I love a group of villains. I wish that they had remained a little more competent. He's called the Wizard, so I don't really understand why they're kind of making him a joke a little bit. Because I like the Wizard. I think he's kind of cool. I know there will be some sentimentality involved, but yeah, I still really like this one. I kind of felt like it held up pretty decently.
Okay, so I'm going to just make a comment here. Bill Mantlo exhibits a lot of valence to me. Like the electron shells, they
Mm.
can be one thing or the other. And he to me is always astonishing or abominable. It's never middle of the road. And it's not in the eye of the beholder. Like it's consensus abominable or consensus excellent. And so here I think we get it's just a bit like the whole package to me is a bit lackluster. So I've got this sort of cool looking Spider-Man. I've got these villains that have a cool visual identity, but I actually thought John Byrne's art was a bit flat here. And
It gets
we've
better.
seen him before this be the uber dynamical, like X-Men was before this. That search for Galactus is before this, and I think the, I'm not going to say it's this art. People would kill for this art today, but given John Byrne's standard, it's not. Let's put it this way: it's not getting in my top. None of the pages here are in my top 1,000 John Byrne pages,
Mm.
which is an absurd thing to like. I understand even having 1,000 amazing pages is probably 800 too many that you would have to ever do in a career. But does that make sense to you, Patrick? That's where I'm coming at from this story. So to me, the whole narrative is a little bit of a misfire, and I understand we're coming in at part two.
I mean,
So
not even this shot of the
so
wizard.
so I do like when people include a tongue in a thing of shock.
That actually reminded me too that it's always the case with Spider-Man. It's hard to criticize the fact that it's wrapped up quickly when we have, Jim Shooter and Secret Wars have Spider-Man sort of take out the X-Men in like 6 or 7 panels. So the fact that, him and Reed Richards together are able to kind of use the Frightful Four against each other to eliminate three of them. One of whom is taken out by a vacuum cleaner. I
Yeah,
mean, it seems fair game a little bit. I do see what you're saying for sure, and I actually think it's interesting you said that there was some art that was better before. I feel, and maybe it's just with the Fantastic Four. I really do feel though, because I've read all of those, I have all of those individual copies, that his work on the Fantastic Four in particular did improve. Like
I'm happy to believe that. I mean, I'm not like I still think that maybe John Byrne's best days are still ahead of him. What I meant was in this issue, I know that you know 6 months ago he was just like knocking it out of the park on the issue before he was leaving X-Men. By the way, like not building to anything, just that was my criticism of the Byrne art. My criticism of Mantlo is also I'm going to go in pretty hard on this because he is concurrently writing or about to take on Spectacular Spider-Man, and it's one of the sleeper hits. Like that sustained quality over dozens and dozens of issues is is universal praise. It's not like Mantlo's like one of those people. He runs hot and cold, but everyone who agrees what the hot spots are, everyone agrees what
Mhm.
the cold spots are. And this is for someone who is writing Spider-Man, just very peculiar
Too simple
stuff.
for you.
Yeah, just really strange. And the Fantastic Four, the part of the Fantastic Four that was sort of lacking here is the family aspect of
Well,
it.
you don't get a lot of Fantastic Four, right? It's very Spider-Man heavy because the Fantastic Four is kind of taken out at the beginning, right? They're Johnny's tricked, he's trapped, the thing is sort of taken out, and then so is Sue Storm. So we really just have Reed Richards and Spider-Man for the bulk of the book, which I think is different.
Yeah, so I'm considering this like going to give it a bump for because I really do like the John Byrne Spider-Man. Even the fake Spider-Man looks really cool, and he
Yeah.
draws on the little stupid suction cups and stuff like that. But yeah, I just can't gloss over the fact that Mantlo and Byrne individually are going to have amazing Spider-Man stories, if you pardon the pun, and Byrne is going to have Fantastic Four stories down the pike and previously, actually, that this is kind of like just a bizarre hinterland. And this is kind of the thing where if I have a whole omnibus of John Byrne team up books, like I'm not feeling shortchanged if I read this in those Marvel team ups that have the Fantastic Four and all that sort of stuff. What I feel shortchanged with is like, oh, the next story is going to be like the return of She Hulk or whatever. Like, that's going to be up here. And then this is just going to look poor by comparison. So, by competent comics, I just mean competent by the standards that John Byrne is able to
Well,
get
yeah,
by
the
with.
only reason I brought up him getting better at Fantastic Four was because I wasn't really thinking, oh, he had such great work before this. So my original comment had been, oh, he's still working on his craft and getting better, but maybe he was just getting better on Fantastic Four. He wasn't necessarily getting better in his career, and I wasn't really putting the
Yeah,
dates
so
for
I'm
it.
just talking about the real timeline, not the you're reading timeline,
Yes,
which,
absolutely. Yeah.
and obviously it helps that even if objectively he was still improving between X-Men and Fantastic Four, the Chris Claremont stuff that he gets to draw is maybe better than this Bill Mantlo stuff. And then I can understand why he wants to do it himself because he's like, oh, you're not playing to my strengths.
I think another thing that you may not love about this, and it comes out, is that this does feel more like a Marvel team up of Spider-Man with Fantastic Four than a
Yeah,
Fantastic Four comic book. And it's because it's a two-parter that where they've tied in Spectacular Spider-Man. And I don't know exactly why that is, right? They made some sort of editorial decision to have this crossover two-issue story arc. So this issue isn't really about what's going on in the
yeah.
Fantastic Four. It's really just about wrapping up the Spider-Man story that we started in Peter Parker. And I feel like that part of it maybe is also
It's
something
probably
rubbing you
coloring,
wrong.
and it's 2025, and we're complaining about crossovers. Nothing has changed
Yeah, I
in
know.
comic books.
I mean, I still love this comic. So let me kick off. I would not ask you to put this above Life Death because I know you love that so well. But I actually do. I, mm, I'm wondering if maybe it should go around heavy metal. Like, is it better than heavy metal?
Like so heavy metal, we kind of did it a bit of a disservice by packaging a lot of stuff into heavy metal. So I don't think we can go quite to heavy metal was something that I had low expectations of and just massively exceeded them. This is not that, Patrick, but
That's
I
fair.
am happy to make it like it's so let's put it this way. It is more coherent than say DC Presents 26.
I was gonna say, and then also maybe better than JLA 235.
Yeah, it's we can't tar this with that sort of mishmash JLA Detroit stuff. So the only thing that I'm debating is if I'm 8 and you were around that at the same time, am I getting better value for money out of my Invasion 1 issue, or am I getting better value for money out of my
Yeah, you can't argue that because Invasion 1 sets up all the alien species and you've got all the I personally enjoy the
Real
art in this one
docs.
better and I like the characters. I feel like there's something about them in this that are more fleshed out and usable for like your imagination than the sort of just panoply of just people that we're throwing at the wall for Invasion.
Yeah.
But I still think Invasion's probably better. I mean, I would be happy to put Invasion above this just because of its scope, if for nothing else.
And so, Patrick, that comes up to a great sort of segue into what I really wanted to ask you is, do you think this will be the last time that we cover Fantastic Four on the channel?
No, 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 no.
Do you
Because
think that it'll
the best Fantastic Four, one of my earliest ones is because you keep alluding to Galactus, is when Galactus comes back and the Avengers team up with the Fantastic Four to fight him. When I got that comic book when I was a kid, my mind was blown. It was one of my favorites for years. So yeah, we're definitely gonna have to do that one. Also, really love it when Galactus comes back again and the Sphinx is involved. And that's a sort of a 4 or 5 arc story
So I don't
line.
want to give that one short shrift. So we're going to probably do that in depth. And then we might do a compare and contrast. So let's compare and contrast John Byrne's sort of early Fantastic Four
Hmm.
with Chris Claremont's early Fantastic Four, which is almost 15 years after this. So I think that might be a nice little squaring the circle of who did it best,
Hmm.
Byrne or Claremont. And that gets me into the other little question and query that I want to ask. I think this is the first time and the last time that we will probably disagree over a John Byrne comic.
Maybe.
Um, is this the end of John Byrne for Tarnished Bronze, or do we have some more things that we want to
There's
do?
it's not possible. There's no
I
way.
don't think, definitely not the end of John Byrne, the creator. I know that we have our interstitial Avengers that keen followers of the channel will need to follow up on. But I think I want to do put some John Byrne art stuff in there, even though I'm aware that a lot of it is like the big heavy hitters of the Bronze Age. So we are going to try and find things that aren't necessarily that, and that might prompt some disagreements with Patrick or I based on more on our personal tastes rather than necessarily the quality of this person's creative career. Much like Keith Giffen, he's got different eras, different characters, so many things going on, his own characters that he has a dog in the fight with, that maybe Patrick or I gravitate towards different ones. Sort of like the total opposite of Bill Mantlo, how everyone knows the good ones, everyone knows the bad ones. So Patrick, do you have a teaser for what John Byrne might be coming down the pike?
Well, I mean, I would definitely say look for John Byrne Fantastic Four because for this time period you can't it's hard to beat that. Um, and maybe this will be up to you, but speaking of different tastes, one thing I think we had spoken about this in a different episode about characters that we want to like that we think we should like, but don't really resonate with us. I always feel like I should like Alpha Flight more than I have because I love John Byrne. What did you say? I'm a Byrne victim. I'm
Yeah.
definitely also a Byrne victim, but never really got into Alpha Flight. I don't know why. Just I never really have. So maybe there are Alpha Flight issues that you like that you can introduce me to.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll definitely be doing some John Byrne art in those in search of Galactus, and here and there we might dip into some X-Men adjacent stuff because the John Byrne X-Men has been done to death. We might need to do a special Christmas special on that Kitty Pryde issue
Oh, that'd be fair.
because it is really good. So if you like John Byrne, like, follow, and subscribe because you'll see more of it later on this channel. Or if you like us, you can like, follow, and subscribe as well. It's been fantastic hosting you here on this robust discussion about Big JB. And we will see you next time.